Good afternoon. 3 people have been sent to hospital after a wild crash where a car plowed into 10 other parked vehicles in Toronto.
And the driver of the car that smashed into all those vehicles is suspected of impaired driving. CTV Sean Leathong joins us live from the scene this afternoon with the latest details. Sean.
Well, Michelle and Nathan, I'm standing on Passmore Avenue, just east of Middlefield Road in Scarborough. Now, the area I'm in right now was crowded last night as there was a festival at a mosque located just north of where I'm standing at the moment. Now, at about 9:15 last night, many of the people in the area said they heard a loud bang. Now, there were several cars parked along this road, and somebody who was traveling westbound was believed to have been colliding with those cars. Now, according to police, there were as many as 10 cars that were plowed into by this vehicle, the vehicle coming to a rest in an area behind me. Now, some of the video we have that were provided by a viewer shows a man behind the wheel of a vehicle, but it's unconfirmed if that is indeed the driver. What we do know is that the driver of an Acura, black Acura, was driving in the area, collided into those 10 cars. Police arrived on scene and the driver attempted to flee, but he was later taken into custody. Now, police have confirmed today that he is facing charges. They haven't been specific as to what those charges are at this time, but we did know last night that they was being investigated as a suspected impaired driver. Now, many of the people who were in the area talked about just the sound of the loud crashes that they heard last night, and here's what they had to say.
This way, we were sitting right there, up to right there, at least 30-40 feet away from here.
But as you see the vehicles, it's just not scratches. It's like tires came out. The cars are totaled. Like, there's no repair on the cars anymore. It's like multiple vehicles, more than 8 vehicles.
I just heard the big bang. Yeah, it was horrible. I've never experienced an accident like this in my life.
Now, police had said there were 3 people sent to hospital, all with minor injuries. One person was believed to have been a pedestrian who was struck by the vehicle. They also had minor injuries. To give you a context of where it ended, just over my left shoulder, the car actually mounted the curb, and there are some tire tracks you can see from where it came to a stop. Now, police say they will provide an update a little later on, and we will wait for that. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. Nathan, Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. It is going to be a big night for concert goers in Toronto at the new Rogers Stadium.
Coldplay will play the first of 4 concerts tonight, and some out-of-town fans have already begun to arrive. CTV's Rahim Ladhani is on scene with more. Hey, Rahim.
Hey, Nathan, how you doing? You know, soundcheck has just gotten away for one of the opening acts, and there is certainly a lot of anticipation and excitement for the first of 4 Coldplay shows, which they'll be performing at the new Rogers Stadium just around the corner from us. In fact, there are about 24 fans who have already started lining up to get in and get a great seat. The first group of people arrived here at 7 a.m. They're going to be waiting outside until 4 p.m. That's when the gates first open. We spoke to them and they tell us the plan is, they all have general admission seating. The plan is to run as fast as they can to get to the front of the stage so that they can get a great view of the band. There are people here from Mexico, Lithuania. We spoke to a woman who's from France. This is going to be her 12th show. Take a listen to how some of the fans are feeling ahead of tonight's concert.
We're pretty excited to see how it's going to be tonight.
Yeah.
We've been told that it was pretty crazy, the show too, the lights too.
Yeah.
So, no, I guess it's a dream come true.
Pretty excited.
Yeah.
First time seeing Coldplay, so I think it's going to be a great show.
Now, this is the second concert at the new stadium, and both concert goers and those who live in the area are hoping the logistics will be smoother than the first concert. Last week, some people said it took them 2 hours just to leave the venue because of poor traffic management. As a result, the city and Live Nation say they've implemented several road closures. They include stretches of Shepherd Avenue, Wilson Avenue, and Carl Hall Road at various times on concert days. Officials also say more traffic personnel will be on site, and there will be enhanced signage and communication. However, many area residents feel they're the unintended victims in all of this, and they don't want this to be the norm every summer for the next 5 years. Take a listen.
Well, there are reasonable concerns given what we've already experienced. The safety of the concert goers is first and foremost. Live Nation does not have a good track record when it comes to concert goer safety. The residents themselves are being affected. We thought noise would be a concern. So far, that hasn't been the issue. Surprisingly, traffic congestion is the problem. And I say that surprisingly because, you know, given that they had worked on this for over a year, we would have thought that would have been worked out.
Now, speaking of concert goer safety, another concern last week was a lack of water for people inside the venue. There were reports of some people fainting. Live Nation says there will be more water stations inside the stadium tonight. Reporting live, I'm Rahim Ladhani. I'll send it back to you both in studio.
All right. Thank you, Rahim. Still to come this half hour, the death toll from flash flooding in Texas is now more than 80, and at least 28 children are among those swept away over the weekend. CTV's Scott Hurst will have the latest. And we have more news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. It's a good start to the work week weather-wise, if you like the heat. Of course, it's important to take precautions, drink lots of water, use sunblock, and stay in the shade if you can. Let's take a look at the satellite radar. You can see to the east of us, there's a few showers. There's a possibility of showers here, but that's roughly 30%. Also, there's some wind, but not major, but you would feel it. So right now, we're sitting at 17 degrees in Orangeville, 27 in Peterborough, 25 in Hamilton, but you notice it feels much warmer than that with the humidex. On the islands, 28, so no cool breeze there. Feels like 37. At Pearson Airport, 29. Now, tonight, it will cool down a little bit, going down to 18. We'll give you a look at the long-range forecast a little bit later on in the show.
To Texas now, crews are continuing to search for victims of catastrophic flooding over the weekend.
It was an absolute force of nature that I've never witnessed before.
More than 80 people have been killed, including 27 campers and counselors from an all-girls Christian camp. Additional rain is forecast, meaning the risk of more flooding is high in central parts of the state. Friday's flash flood started with a particularly bad storm that dropped most of the 30 centimeters of rain forecast in the early morning hours. We bring in now CTV's Scott Hurst, joining us from the CTV National Newsroom. Scott, you've been following. What are the latest details?
Michelle, good afternoon. The images coming out of Central Texas, first and foremost, are just devastating, and the grim and painstaking search and rescue and also recovery efforts are continuing. Hundreds of first responders from more than a dozen agencies rescuing close to 1,000 people over the past several days over the weekend. Now in its fourth day, as dozens of people are still missing, upwards of 41 still unaccounted for, but the flooding being blamed for more than 80 deaths confirmed so far, including at least 27 kids and counselors at that Christian girls summer camp, as well as 10 campers and 1 counselor still unaccounted for as the catastrophe was unfolding in the early hours of Friday. The Guadalupe River running through central Texas, rising more than 8 meters in less than an hour outside San Antonio, sending walls of water crashing over the banks. Survivors have been recounting some harrowing tales, clinging to trees and branches and floating on debris, doing whatever they can to stay above water. Now, more storms are expected in the region over the next 24 to 48 hours, so this is making matters worse, with more flood alerts in place for select locations, including some of the areas hit incredibly hard. A flood watch right now, Michelle, is in effect, covering nearly 5 million people in the area.
It's frightening. The images are awful. And maybe not surprisingly, there's criticism surrounding this tragedy. People wondering, could something have been done differently to spare all those lives?
Criticism for all levels of government right now, Michelle, in the immediate aftermath, from local to state, all the way up to the White House, as Texas officials are facing criticism for the preparation and why residents, and that summer camp in particular, may not have been warned with enough time or told to evacuate, given enough time to get out. Now, the National Weather Service did send out a series of flash flood warnings in the early hours of Friday before issuing a flash flood emergency, but local officials say they had not expected such an intense rainfall, a downpour in such a short amount of time. They're saying equivalent to a month's worth of rain in that short amount of time early Friday morning. Now, officials have been critical of the response, saying the National Weather Service did not convey the severity of the storm, while others are defending the Weather Forecasting Agency, which has been hit significantly by cuts from the Trump administration, Michelle, over the past several months. Now, here's what we know from the U.S. president. He plans to visit the area likely later this week, potentially Friday, to tour the impacted flood zone. But right now, the biggest concern are those storms as the search and rescue and recovery efforts continue. More bad weather is on the way.
CTV's Scott Hurst live in the National Newsroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Toronto's mayor is leading a trade mission to Ireland. Yesterday, Olivia Chow visited a memorial in Dublin honoring those impacted by the Irish potato famine. Today, she's scheduled to meet with Canada's ambassador to Ireland, as well as Irish business leaders and representatives of the country's film and TV studios. She'll also co-host a reception later today.
Ontario's premier is in Alberta, where he joined his counterpart in taking steps to enhance economic opportunities between the two provinces.
We're signing 2 memorandums of understanding that will see us advance pipelines and pathways to boost exports of homegrown energy and critical minerals to markets across Canada and across the world, and work collaboratively to support both Ontario's automotive industry as well as Alberta's liquor manufacturing industry, industries that contribute substantially to our provincial economies.
These agreements are transformational. Ontario and Alberta are working together to build new energy and trade infrastructure, including pipelines and rail lines, so we can unlock the full potential of Canada's economy by diversifying our trading partners and bringing our natural resources to new customers and new markets.
The 2 memorandums of understanding focus on energy priorities, trade, and interprovincial cooperation. The premier says the best way to protect Canadian workers from U.S. tariffs and economic uncertainty is to build infrastructure to get resources into new markets. He signed a memorandum with Manitoba's premier in May to boost the movement of goods and labor between the 2 provinces. Well, can we talk about our Toronto Blue Jays? They're on a winning streak that continues. They've won 8 games in a row.
It's not a franchise record, but fans are hyped. CTV's Mike Walker joins us now from Rogers Centre. Mike, most people did not see this coming.
That's correct, Nathan and Michelle. A lot of people were writing the Blue Jays off at the start of the season, but the boys have really turned it around. Now, leading in the AL East for the first time in nearly a decade. The Blue Jays just capped off a huge homestand, sweeping both the Angels and Yankees in this homestand in 7 games that have catapulted them to first in the AL East. With just 6 games to go until the All-Star break, the Blue Jays now have 52 wins. Their record for the halfway point of the season is 53, so they could tie and set a new franchise record for the halfway point with just 6 games left to go. We've been speaking with fans who have been gearing up on new Blue Jays merchandise. They're really excited. They're riding this wave of an 8-game winning streak. Here's more from them.
It's very exciting to see. You know, I watch them all the time to see them on this winning streak, you know, especially when they swept the homestand. That's amazing, especially against the Yankees. So very excited to see. Glad to see them all doing well, especially Springer, you know.
Good turnaround. It's great to see. Yeah, we got some young blood coming up through. It's a promising mid-season form.
Fantastic. They finally started hitting to go along with the pitching. The bullpen looks good. I think we just need to add some pieces. Maybe a little bullpen help, maybe another starter to get us through.
Definitely the hitting. I mean, these guys are still giving up 5, 6, 7 runs a game, but, you know, the offense is scoring them, 9, 10, 11 to win games, So it's definitely the offense that's going really well right now.
Now, the Jays' longest winning streak is 11 games. They've done that 5 times. The last time was back in August 2015. So the Jays are on the road now for 6 more games before the All-Star break. First, they play the White Sox in Chicago and then visit the Athletics. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Nathan and Michelle, back to you.
All right, thank you, Mike. The 407 is now reopened after an hours-long closure on the eastbound lanes in the West End. The 407 was closed eastbound at Mississauga Road during the rush hours. Commuters were urged to avoid the highway while a serious crash was being investigated. The driver of the car suffered serious injuries. All right, one more look at the forecast. There's a slight chance of showers today, but overall, lots of sunshines and lots of heat. Not a record. The record high on this day was 37 degrees, so we're not quite there yet. If you got plans for this evening, it's going to be a comfortable night, 7 o'clock-ish, 24 degrees. It's going to dip a little bit and then dips even more at night. But if the kids have baseball or soccer, conditions are good. We'll give you a look at the long-range forecast a little bit later. In fact, how about right after the break?
When you see it happen, send it to CTV News. Text 10400 from your screen to ours. Text 10400.
Well, that was certainly a steamy weekend. I think if you could stay cool and enjoy the warmth with pools at the lake, it was really, really nice. Maybe too hot for some, though.
Well, funny, I love the hot weather, but I will say it was in small doses. So after maybe 15, 20 minutes out in the heat, you got to find shade, you got to drink lots of water, wear lots of sunblock, take the precautions. If you do that, I think you're in good shape. It's also nice if you have... looking at how things are outside right now, it's a hot one already, and there is a bit of wind, but it's not going to cool you down. And the humidex is also high, so bear that in mind. The weather itself, though, let's just give you that stinger first.
Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers. You don't pay unless they win.
So let's look at the conditions right now. If you notice, north of us is kind of seasonal, but below, like the Golden Horseshoe, 22 in Windsor, 29 in Toronto, 24 in Kingston. Feels like 37 already in the city of Toronto. The high 30 degrees here, 25 in Waterloo, 30 in Hamilton. So I guess, again, southeast is really where the hot weather is for the most part. Not so bad north of us. Sunblock an issue today because the UV index is high. 8 for Toronto, 9 for Hamilton, 9 for St. Catharines. So bear that in mind. Lots of sunblock, especially for the kids if they've got camp today. Lows are good, but this is really after the sun goes down. So 7, 8, 9 o'clock is still going to be hot. But after that, when the sun is down, we're down to 18 in Toronto, 14 in Peterborough, 17 in Kingston. So pretty good if you like cooler weather tonight, if you maybe want to go for a jog or something. Looking at the long-range forecast today, there's a slight chance of showers. Feels like 38, the high 30. For tomorrow, pretty much the same thing. A high of 27 is going to feel like 33. And then Wednesday, again, there's just a slight chance of showers, a few clouds, a high 25, so more comfortable. And then Thursday and Friday, highs of 27 and 29. And again, there's that slight chance of showers over Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Right now, the weekend's looking pretty good. It's going to be hot, a high of 29 Saturday, 27 on Sunday. And again, there's that slight risk of showers. So that might change later in the week. The risk might increase. There could be thunder showers as well. But overall, it looks like a pretty good week of summer. Well, to other news now. A new report slams Canadian political leaders' recent efforts to break down internal trade barriers. The report lands just ahead of the country's internal trade ministers' meeting in Quebec City this week. CTV's Colton Prale joins us now from Ottawa with more. So, Colton, the report says the removal of those trade barriers won't be as beneficial as might be claimed.
Yeah, it's a really interesting report, which essentially says that the economic benefits of this report are going to be marginal, that the amount of free trade that's been inhibited is vastly overstated. And the evidence that they use to make this argument is that under the previous free trade agreement, so the Canada Free Trade Agreement that covers all of Canada, the new West Partnership Trade Agreement that exists among Western provinces, they all have dispute measures in place. So if you do have an issue with a barrier, you can take it to the courts and try to get that dispute resolved. And there have been relatively few disputes that have made it all the way to the top, that have gone through the legal process and resulted in changes. And so this report puts that forward as evidence that the barriers that exist aren't actually that significant for companies because we haven't seen businesses actively trying to tear them down. It also points at Stats Canada data, which looks at essentially Canada's geography as the largest issue for interprovincial trade. So businesses themselves listed things like transportation, the delay between an order being placed and it arriving, and shipping costs, all as their biggest barriers to getting interprovincial goods or services across those borders and to customers. And so the combination of those two things leads the authors of this report to suggest that the gains are going to be very marginal, but they also highlight that there is a risk to doing all of this, that the speed at which Canada and the provinces are moving could lead to a situation where you find the floor rather than the ceiling for standards. And they're framing this as the possible risk of a race to the bottom. So you've seen nurses in Manitoba, for example, warning about diminishing standards through mutual recognition. They point to specific incidences where it might be good to have higher standards in some provinces. So Albertan well drillers, for example, need a higher level of training than the rest of Canada because you're much more likely to accidentally drill into oil in Alberta than you are digging in Ontario. And so there are these moments and these bits of policy that the authors point out existed for a very good reason, and that by removing them, we could actually cause more harm to the country than what they say is marginal economic gain.
So what does it suggest needs to be done?
Essentially, more caution. This isn't to say that reducing these barriers is a bad idea, but that the manner in which it's being done may not be the most efficient. So you look at, for example, the changes that happened in Ontario when they passed their legislation to remove all of the free trade exemptions that existed. It also curbed some of the province's abilities to help industry and to control sectors, to mandate, for example, that Ontario wines have grapes grown locally. This is a very small thing, but it helps bolster the Ontario wine sector. And so their position, the author's position, is that by taking a little bit more time in this, by moving slightly less quickly, we can have a better chance of reviewing what actually needs to change and what was in place for a very good reason and probably should stay in place. So they point to provinces like New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, and Quebec, who have moved much, much slower than other provinces on this issue, but who they say are actually protecting some of their really core industries by doing so.
Right. But Ontario does have a much bigger overall economy and a bigger trade relationship. When you look at how quickly Trump is moving, wouldn't it make sense to move just as quickly?
And that's the pushback from critics. The pushback from critics is absolutely that this is something that needs to be done quickly, that these barriers need to be, that yes, on a longer scale, you could be perhaps more accurate, but this is to solve an immediate problem. The other pushback we're seeing from critics is that when you go through this process, if you do move quickly, even if you cut something you shouldn't have, they point to jurisdictions like Australia, who, when they went through this process, in the next 5 years actually bolstered their national standards because all of these states were intermingling, they were working together, and they found out that actually the floor was a little lower than it needed to be, and they needed to raise the bar overall so that there was mutual recognition across that country. Critics here say that's likely to happen in Canada as well, as Ontario and Manitoba and, like you saw, Alberta are working together. They'll figure out what works and readjust for that. The other element that they're pushing back on is what we saw today with Doug Ford and Danielle Smith, which is that a movement to infrastructure is where the real progress lies. Building more rail, more ports, more ways to ship goods across the country, that's going to have a much larger economic benefit than regulatory changes.
Yeah, most agree with that. CTV's Colton Prale in Ottawa. Thank you.
Anytime.
All right, moving on to other news. Many Canadians are clearly still boycotting trips to the U.S. after Donald Trump started a trade war and threatened Canadian sovereignty.
The self-imposed ban is giving the East Coast a boost. As CTV's Maria Saru reports, some airlines are actually adding flights to Atlantic provinces.
Touching down in PEI just got a lot easier for Toronto travelers.
More options is better.
Porter now flies daily between Charlottetown and Canada's biggest city, up from 4 times per week. It also added new links to Moncton and Deer Lake. The airline says it ramped up service this summer, partly because more Canadians are skipping the States. It also has more jets to handle the influx.
We've made quite a few schedule changes in the U.S. over the past few months to reflect some softening of the demand.
In June, Statistics Canada data showed Canadian return trips from the U.S. fell for 5 straight months.
Because of Trump.
Because of the rhetoric from Trump about taking over Canada.
I guess they're just afraid of crossing over the border.
Porter says it's seeing 20% more domestic bookings from June through August than in 2024.
We go where the demand is. The overall PEI market is newer to us, but we've been able to grow our presence in there because people have tried us over the years and they want to keep trying us on all the markets they can.
It's not just Porter or PEI riding the wave. WestJet added direct flights to Halifax and Deer Lake from major cities across the country, and Air Canada expanded its schedule across the East Coast.
The runway's open, and airlines are watching what the numbers say. If the appetite for Atlantic Canada stays strong, new routes could be cleared for takeoff long term. Maria Saru, CTV News, Charlottetown.
Coming up on CTV News at noon, a new study is offering insight into why food prices are on the rise. We'll sink our teeth into it after the break. Alberta beef and other meat may cost a lot more this year than it did last.
New global food index has been tracking climbing costs and the reasons why some staples are taking a bigger bite out of the budget. CTV's Camille Karamali has more details.
This Toronto butcher shop,
I'll send my friend,
bustling on this Sunday.
This is such a treat today.
A rare treat because meat for some has become a luxury.
Definitely meat is more.
Just listen to how much some of these meats,
something like oxtail,
have gone up in price.
Prices have practically tripled for myself.
The owner of this shop, Marlon Rosenbaum, feeling a bit raw about how much he's had to dish out for some cuts.
It's a tough time for small businesses. Everything costs more than it ever did before.
Meat, one of multiple items to see a price jump globally this month. The other items, vegetable oil and dairy. Meat now hitting an all-time high, up 2% since May, but rising more than 6% since last June. Vegetable oil also seeing a 2% increase since May, up 18% from last year. And although dairy only saw a 0.5% increase since May, it's jumped up 20% since this time last year.
We're seeing reduced production because there are fewer cows around. We've seen dry weather in North America mean in the last couple of years mean there's been less feed available.
Less feed available to raise cows not only puts the price of dairy on the rise, it means with a surging population, there's less to go around.
The world will be short 5 times Canada's national production by 2030, so that pressure will only increase.
But these global food prices don't always reflect Canadian food prices. Take vegetable oil, for example, surging in price globally, but in Canada, the cost has actually gone down.
We have excess supply of canola oil in this country, which is the predominant oil that we use.
All in all, people will still have to pay more for most foods.
So what gives you hope to keep going?
I think just trying to keep in mind that good quality meat is something that there will always be a demand for.
Hoping that for these customers, locally sourced meat will still be a cut above the rest. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
Now to a very real debate about a fake band. Music by the group called Velvet Sundown appeared on streaming services last month.
And it quickly gained a following, but it was weeks before anyone realized the music and photos of the band were all generated by artificial intelligence. Here's CTV's John Venivalle-Rao.
AI is officially getting scary.
On TikTok, there's been plenty of buzz.
This is Velvet Sundown.
About the band, which is adding hundreds of thousands of listeners daily on Spotify.
Dust on the wind, boots on the ground.
Checking out songs AI generated, released by a supposed group called the Velvet Sundown, which very little is known about. And even if it's AI, many we played the music for were impressed.
I would say definitely if you put it on the radio, it would chart.
If you just told me and you didn't tell me that was AI, I probably wouldn't have known.
There are what appear to be AI-generated pictures of the group.
Are you sure we're not real?
Which has put out 2 albums and first flagged as suspicious by users on Reddit.
I think it's pretty good. I think it's no better or no worse than probably thousands of songs that come my way.
The attention it's getting intensifying the debate over whether AI music should be clearly labeled as such, something Spotify and many other streamers don't do.
It's basically the Wild West across Spotify because you can post content and you're not required to let anyone know that it is in fact AI generated.
Music streaming service Deezer uses a tool to detect AI songs. As of April, it said 18% of all music uploaded, that's 20,000 songs a day, are entirely AI generated.
That company recently started flagging AI music to its listeners. The CEO writing, AI is not inherently good or bad, but we believe a responsible and transparent approach is key to building trust with our users and the music industry.
Do you think they should label this stuff as AI?
I definitely think they should label it. I feel like some people just don't want to listen to AI content or see that.
But some aren't all that fussed about labeling.
I would listen to it anyway, even if it's AI, because good music's good music.
And no matter your views, it is another noteworthy AI moment. John Venivalle-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Well, the latest movie in the Jurassic Park franchise crushed the competition at the weekend box office.
This would be a medical breakthrough that could save countless lives.
Jurassic World Rebirth opened with $91.5 million US in ticket sales over the weekend, following an early Wednesday opening to take advantage of the long weekend south of the border. F1, the movie, dropped to second place in its second weekend with $26.1 million across North America. Meantime, the live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon earned another $11 million. Well, on a week where both Canada and the U.S. celebrated their birthdays, a new film now in theaters looks at both countries from a post-apocalyptic point of view.
CTV's Andrea Kay sat down with the director and one of the stars of the Canadian thriller 40 Acres.
All we need is right here.
The idea for the film 40 Acres, a post-apocalyptic thriller, came to writer-director R.T. Thorne 7 years ago. Thorne had already made his mark on the small screen. This is his first feature film.
I wasn't in a hurry, you know. I've been directing for quite some time, doing, you know, different forms of filmmaking, and I said, you know, I have such a love for cinema that I said, you know, if I'm gonna make my first expression in cinema, I want it to be something that that touches me as well.
Nobody else out there like us.
The Freemans are descendants of the American Civil War who settled in Canada. Now, in a world where food is scarce, the Black and Indigenous family are forced to fight to survive on the family farm. They must defend it and themselves from cannibals trying to take what's theirs.
I want to be at the edge of my seat. I like being scared at the movies, and this film had that. But more than that, it had a complexity to the kinds of themes that it wanted to explore. And so I was in from the get-go.
The role of the patriarch, Galen, was written for Canadian actor Michael Grey Eyes. He says he was in the moment he read the script.
As an actor, you know, of color who, you know, I've been in the industry like just over 30 years now, you know, it's more rare than you think when you have when you work with a director and a filmmaker who is conversant in the history of representation of our communities, like the way RT was.
We don't need nothing and nobody.
On some level, the film is an homage to Thorne's mother, who ran a strict household. Leading the charge is Screen Actors Guild and Critics' Choice Award nominee Danielle Deadweiler. She plays the ex-military matriarch, Haley Freeman.
Danielle is a generational talent. That's just, it cannot be overstated. I've loved her in absolutely everything that I've seen her in. She's incredibly magnetic. She grabs your attention whenever she's on screen, no matter who's on screen with her. And so, you know, I really wanted her for this role.
Shot in and around Sudbury with an initial $8 million budget, Thorne says the location was a key factor.
The Freemans had to live on an isolated farm, you know, because of, you know, the way that they live, they choose to live. So we went up there to find that, and then there's gorgeous landscapes up there.
A music video director for 11 years, he was behind the camera for artists from Drake to Snoop Dogg. The Calgary-born director is a Canadian Screen Award and 17-time Music Video Award winner. And then, on the small screen, he directed a number of series, including The Porter and Degrassi: The Next Generation. But now it looks like his future is on the big screen. Thorne is already working on his next film. 40 Acres is in theaters now. Andrea Case, CTV News.
And still to come, Drake has made his mark online once again with his Iceman tour through downtown Toronto. Virgin Radio's Sam East will have the details.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Drake has been in the headlines recently for his ongoing lawsuit with Universal Music. However, it appears the Toronto rapper is teasing a new album and doing so in a unique way. For more on his promotion, we're joined live by Sam East, host with 99.9 Virgin Radio, for our regular Monday segment, Chronically Online. Sam, it is Monday once again. Let's talk about what Drake's been up to.
Well, he is definitely keeping us top of mind and doing some really great promotion for a local business. Iceman. If you haven't heard of them before, you probably have after this weekend. On Friday, July the 4th, Drake did a live stream, Iceman Episode 1. He was in an Iceman warehouse. There he is doing a little performance for everyone. And then eventually he hopped into the Iceman truck and was roaming around the streets of Toronto. People, of course, were recognizing him, some even heckling him at some points. I mean, this is the risk that you run by doing a live stream, but he handled it the way that Drake does. And now let's talk about this local business, Iceman, a local ice provider in Toronto that apparently received over 200 calls over the course of this 1 hour live stream that Drake was running. So at the very least, he really did help boost a local business on top of promoting some new music.
And we're talking about it. Honestly, we in news, we know Iceman. You've probably been there, Nathan. I've been to Iceman just during a heat wave. It's one of those things you do. You talk to the ice guy during a heat wave, and they can really put things into perspective. Can't wait to hear Drake's new album. Now let's turn to movies, because there's a popular buddy cop film from the 1990s, which now has a new disclaimer on streaming services. What's this all about?
Okay, so Rush Hour from 1998. So it's pushing almost 30 years now. The original Rush Hour has a disclaimer. Now, this is on USA Network. No word yet if that's going to travel to Canadian networks. But it says, we all love our 90s buddy comedies. But this movie was created in a different time. FYI, certain depictions, language, and humor may seem outdated and at times offensive. Now, this isn't the first time a disclaimer has gone out on an older film, but people are really talking about this, saying that it's Gen Z's fault, and this younger generation is doomed, they're too sensitive. Other people, well in support of it, saying, yeah, some of the jokes didn't age well over 30 years into the future, and so it's something we have to do if we want to enjoy a movie like this, but have a bit of a critical eye, a critical lens while we are watching it.
It certainly raises the question, do adults need to be warned about this sort of thing? Like, I'm watching this scene right here. Do you see that phone? That's how I know this movie's old as heck, right?
I know, it almost, for us, it doesn't need a disclaimer. We know it's really old.
Definitely. And let's just say kids were watching it. They would be like, this looks like it was done in a different time. But you know what? Does it hurt? Probably not. But certainly it sounds like, based on what's online, people just get annoyed by these disclaimers.
Yeah, but again, that younger generation is being introduced to this film from almost 30 years ago. I think it's warranted. I mean, if you watch a show like Friends, for example, some of the jokes don't carry so well in 2025. So maybe we'll start seeing this more and more with movies and series as well that we know and love.
I think you're probably right. Sammy's 99.9 Virgin Radio. Her show's weekdays from 2 to 5 p.m. Great to have you stop by to start the week. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michelle. Happy Monday.
And you too. Well, next we have an amazing story from southeastern Ontario, where a senior got into trouble while swimming at a beach.
A 12-year-old girl realized what was going on and quickly sprang into action, likely helping to save his life. CTV's Hannah Schmidt with the details.
Emergency crews were called to this small cove in Port Dover Saturday afternoon after a 65-year-old swimmer experienced a medical episode while in the water.
I got notified. I was at the other end of the beach. I was notified that there was someone in distress having, they thought, was a heart attack on the beach.
Thanks to a coordinated effort between a young relative and a nearby beachgoer, help came quickly.
12-year-old young girl, I think, was related to him and pulled him out of the water. Was able to get him close enough to the shore that some bystanders pulled him in, and then were able to start performing CPR immediately.
The swimmer was later transported to hospital.
After the individual was transported to the hospital, they were conscious and stable, and no major injuries. Without that swift action, that swift thinking, and ability to recognize a dangerous situation, it could have been a vastly different outcome.
The rescue follows several water-related fatalities across southwestern Ontario in recent weeks, including drownings at the Elora Quarry and Ipperwash Beach.
So there's often drownings in open water, and this year is no different. We are seeing those open water drownings happening far too frequently this year.
Life Saving Society Ontario says while summer draws more people to the water, conditions can change quickly, even for experienced swimmers.
July is always the most significant month for drownings. You need to inform yourself about what that body of water is like. Is it deep? Is it shallow? Is it rough? Are there currents? Lots of things can happen.
Police and safety officials are urging families to stay alert, especially when swimming at unsupervised beaches.
Choose lifeguard supervised settings. Only 1% of surroundings in Ontario happen in lifeguard supervised settings.
This beach and other beaches across Norfolk County, they aren't staffed with lifeguards, so people need to be aware of that when they're coming into our beach areas, whether it's Port Dover or Turkey Point or Long Point.
They say this weekend's incident serves as a reminder that being prepared can make all the difference during peak beach season.
And these things, again, they can happen unexpectedly. If it wasn't for the swift action of a young 12-year-old and a bystander on the beach, we'd be having a very different conversation today.
Hannah Schmidt, CTV News, Port Dover.
Now to the West End, where residents are expressing concerns about a pond after dozens of dead fish washed ashore.
We have raised this many times with the current government, and they have done nothing. What the community right now wants a comprehensive investigation.
These pictures were taken at Topham Pond near Jane and Eglinton. Residents claim a chemical spill in the area killed the fish in the pond. However, neither the city or Ontario's Environment Ministry has commented on the situation.
In Nepal, there's been a joyous celebration. This celebration marked the 90th birthday of the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhists. He says he hopes to live until the age of 130 before being reincarnated as the next Buddhist leader. Coming up, a message from Masai Ujiri to Toronto. We'll have that for you after this short break. Masai Ujiri is expressing his love for Toronto and Canada.
The former Raptors president and vice chairman posted a message to fans online today.
To the Raptors family, to our fans, every single player that's worn the uniform with passion and pride, I love you and I thank you. This team has reached the summit once before. With strong leadership in place, the Raptors will continue to climb that mountain back to an NBA title. You will win again in Toronto.
Ujiri says the bond he's forged with the city and the country will last forever, and despite a new chapter beginning, the love will always be there. The Raptors had a winning record with Ujiri at the helm, and the team won its first franchise championship in 2019. Who can forget that year? Doesn't it bring back such great memories when we were flying high as a team?
It was so fabulous. We'll never forget.
All right, let's talk about the forecast right now. Well, before we get to the forecast, 70 high school girls from across the country are participating in Ottawa's first ever overnight hackathon.
Attendees they stayed up all night to work together to create their own video game. CTV's Camille Wilson has their story.
Staying up all night to play video games may sound like a teenager's dream, but when it's a hackathon game jam, it's about more than just playing games. For Sarah Shirazi, this is her first time attending this type of event.
I wanted the opportunity to program something interesting, design a game of my own with the support of my friends, of course. I'm not very good at coding, and I really wanted to just get better, and I feel like practice is the way to do that.
70 students, 25 hours, one goal, all divided into groups competing to build a video game from scratch. Shirazi says she just wants to make something she can be proud of.
I'm I want the experience of it type person, and so I would really enjoy the opportunity to make something, as well as the opportunity to meet so many other people. I see so many familiar faces, but there's also so many people I don't know. And I would really like to make new friends and really just get to know the other people who are interested in similar things to me.
With no previous experiences, the ladies will build their game through trial and error with coding, collaboration, imagination, and their creativity.
If you have no coding experience, go to Hanya.
Within these next 25 hours, they will get to have fun, but most importantly, learn through workshops and how to code. They will learn CSS, HTML, and different engines and languages. And at the end, I hope that everyone can build a game that they're proud of.
It's the first ever all-girls hackathon in Ottawa, highlighting an industry that is generally male-dominated.
I'm gonna write down some key ideas on my notebook, sketch out what I want the game to look like, and just go on Canva and start designing it before I start coding it, so that I have all the designs out of the way before I actually start coding.
Through it all, plenty of learning opportunities.
To make sure that we're taking intermittent, 5 to 10 minute breaks in between, because otherwise you kind of walk away from it and you come back and you see something totally new and you're like, oh wait, I should do this.
Camille Wilson, CTV News.
Seems like you're good.
Let's take one last look at the forecast. Right now, it is hot, 29 in Toronto, 28 in Peterborough, feels like 37 here. For the kids heading to camp tomorrow, shorts and t-shirt weather for sure, and it's going to be a day where you got to wear lots of sunblock today as well. Remember, we talked about thunder showers as a possibility. That is the case for today and tomorrow, and the week of overall looks pretty consistent, hot weather, which is pretty much seasonal for this time of year. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For all of us here at CTV News, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great day.